Ken Schultz, as you watch this, care to guess a hazard on the strength of this tornado? Your own personal guess?
Well, again, you see the mobile homes there, but they're not destroyed. They're just off their foundations. I mean, they are heavily damaged, obviously, but the foundation is right here. So these things have been blown off their foundations. They haven't been rolled in this case. Again, whether this is, I'll tell you something about tornado strengths. They're not persistent. Tornadoes will intensify and weaken. They may start off weak, gain intensity, and then diminish. We could be looking at a section of town which has F1 damage, for example, and then perhaps go to another section of town where you could see perhaps F2 damage. My guess is, and I'll consult with my compatriots back in the weather office, Jeremy and Dave and Kristen, but F1, F2 at times, perhaps in this area, maybe winds like we have seen with other storms that have hit Kentuckiana over the last couple of days, up to about 150 miles per hour. Seems like the average tornado width lately anyway has been somewhere around 300 yards, and tornado paths have varied from just a few miles to many miles, but that's too early to say. They haven't gotten out the yardstick yet and done all the measurements, but that's just an early conjecture on my part.
All right. You know, Rachel, I think that as we head toward nightfall, what's going to be very interesting in Marengo is security. We didn't touch on that with Melissa. Melissa, are you there?
Yes,
what do you
I
think
am,
about
Doug.
nightfall and security for the folks there?
Everybody is here for security. We haven't talked specifically about how they will make sure no one gets in or out of the town, but they have all of the state police. We have Department of Natural Resources conservation officers here. We have volunteers from all the surrounding communities, Crawford County, Harrison County. We have Indiana State Police, a lot of people who are here volunteering, and I'm sure that they will take care of the security later. One thing they are concerned about, maybe this is something that Ken could answer, there are reports that another storm may be headed this way for late tonight, around midnight, and some of the officers here have been concerned about that.
Well, that is the case, and we talked about several rounds and several episodes of funnel clouds and tornadoes out of the first round. Now you're looking at Storm Tracker 3D, and there's still some showers and thunderstorms going on, especially over in the eastern sections of Shelby County right now, but the heaviest activity actually pushing east of Frankfort and the Lexington region. Right now we're here, and it's pretty quiet, although showers have been popping up from time to time here over the last couple of hours. That trend will likely continue to do so. The other band, the other band is off to our west, back through parts of Illinois and southeast Missouri. Now this is also severe. We have severe weather watches, warnings out for this territory. We're here. It is now through about mid-central Illinois, and easily it's going to take, at least I'm just ballparking this again, about 4 hours. So 11 to 3, 11 to 2 as it crisscrosses the region. There's another possibility that we could have another round of heavy or severe thunderstorms at that time. So
in earlier,
yes.
And to be quite honest with you, I don't know what the status that is. We had people checking on it, but I haven't heard otherwise.
Yeah, we had heard, Melissa said that maybe that they're just out and about and haven't contacted parents. Could that be the case there?
That could be the case. There's a lot of people milling around here, and that's what we're trying to get a handle on.
Well, Lieutenant, how many buildings, you say you're confident that all the buildings have been searched. About how many are we talking about now? Do you have a handle yet on the number damaged?
Sir, I really don't have a specific number. I would say 50% of the town has some damage, but less than that damage, so it's hard for me to say exactly.
Is there anything that you're particularly concerned about? We know you've imposed the curfew. Obviously, you must have power lines down. Have people gotten up there and at least, turned the power off to certain areas? Is there any kind of immediate danger with anything like that?
I'm having a hard time hearing you, but the power, as far as that goes, is everything south of State Road 64 down to the interstate is without power right now. Best we can tell, and that's probably not going to change. So we're trying to get some floodlights in. Another reason why we just really need people who don't need to be here out of here.
Okay. If you could stay with us for one more second, we appreciate it. We're going back to Ken Schultz.
Another weather update. Ken?
Yeah, again, no warnings, but we've been tracking these right from the get-go this afternoon. And
thank you so much. Lieutenant Price, are you still with us?
Rachel, he has gone into a meeting to plan the security for this evening. This is Melissa again. And they said 8 o'clock, everybody out of Marengo who does not need to be in Marengo. And we do have a lot of people milling around. You know, it is an extraordinary sight, and a lot of people want to see it. But as of 8 o'clock, and we call it fast time here, so in about 10 minutes, they're going to start telling everybody to get out. I should tell you that State Road 66, and one of the streets that was so badly damaged is Bradley, I'm told now. State Road 66 that runs right through Marengo and Bradley when you've been seeing those pictures.
And Melissa, as we've been saying, just the one fatality, but from what Lieutenant Price told us, no serious injuries other than that, and utterly amazing to me just looking at the live pictures from Sky 11.
It really is amazing. Just to see all of the trees down and trees on houses, you would think a lot more shattered glass would result in some injuries. But I think people just headed to their basement, headed to those closets in the center of their homes. And as you have said, we've talked to a lot of people who rode out the storm.
Right here.
And, yeah,
I'm sorry, right here is just a roof collapse. I mean, it just went right down on the top of this home.
And Melissa, I guess the question is going to be, many people lost their homes. What about tonight with this next round of storms coming? Is a shelter been opened? Where are these going to people take refuge?
Yes, Crawford County High School. There is a shelter at Crawford County High School. And a lot of people have been taken over there by school bus. Lots of school buses have been taking people over to Crawford County High School. There are also medical teams over there that are checking people out. The person I talked about a while ago had the high blood pressure and the palpitations. They were taken over to Crawford County High School and checked out. So the shelter is open, and all kinds of people are helping out, and we will be reporting from there a little bit later. But right now, the center of activity is Marengo, and they have all kinds of chainsaws in here already, and it's really remarkable how much has been done since I got here just a few hours ago. I think I got here about 5 o'clock, and a lot has been cleaned up. Of course, all the lines are down. There's no power here. There are no telephone lines. They are still searching for 2 people. Now, we do not know if those 2 people were actually injured in the tornado, if they're missing because of the tornado, or if they're missing because the communication system is just so horrible. No cell lines, very few. You have to kind of walk around to find one. No landlines, no power. So they are looking for 2 young people that they thought were in that apartment complex that was damaged. But they don't know if this is an actual situation where people are missing, or they just have not made contact recently.
Okay, Melissa, well, while we have the helicopter still up, before it gets dark, I'd like to have us take sort of an aerial tour with our photographer. If you could zoom in to that damage right square in the screen there to the left there, you see one home that looks flattened. We're going to hopscotch around here for a little bit before we leave. This almost looks like a storage shed, where the rooftop was just peeled.
Okay.
Right off.
Sky 11, just stay tuned. And Ken Schultz, some more immediate weather information. Ken?
Well, we were plotting and talking about that storm in Oldham County, and again, preceding this a little bit, we thought there was a little twist, a little angle to that thing, and indeed it is severe. Let's go to Dave Kingman. Bring us up to date with what's going on.
8:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Severe thunderstorm warning is now in effect for Oldham and Henry counties.
Rachel,
all right,
Doug?
Ken, thanks. Once again, the helicopter above the city, the town of Marengo, Indiana, a small town, and we wanted to show you some very specific shots. If our photographer can zoom in to where we are now.
And the apartment building that we've been talking about there in the center of the picture.
On the bottom sort of your screen. And occasionally, as the helicopter makes a turn, we do lose the picture. But down below, still you can see some of the damage. If we could get a little bit more of a closer shot. There we go.
But as they said, really down that one road has most of the damage.
Here's the main street. We've shown you the 2 mobile homes together there. A rather large house right next to it, as you can see. It looks like a structure there. These 2 mobile homes were moved off their foundations and moved to where you see them resting. And there are 2 foundations right there up against the road.
And we can tell you the fatality was in a mobile home. in Marengo. Amazingly, no other reports of any kind of serious injuries. They don't really have a count on the number of structures that were damaged, but they are saying at least 50% of the town has been damaged in some way.
But good news that we learned a few minutes ago from the Indiana State Police lieutenant is that they have searched most of these buildings that you're looking at, and here are these two homes
You can see them still going up in there.
Draped in trees, and they believe they have accounted for all of the injuries and the people through this storm, which was reported to have been striking Marengo at 3:43 p.m. The exact time is when it came through the area. And this home across the street from one nearly flattened, again gives you the random nature of the tornado.
Exactly. And we should let you know again, in just about 5 minutes, the curfew is going to be set in Marengo. Basically, if you don't live there, you're being told to get out of the town. They're worried about security. We also need to let you know, Ken's been talking about another potential batch of severe weather moving our way. These folks in Marengo can now take refuge in Crawford County High School. That is now the shelter that has been set up in that area.
And we want to check in with Ken again on following this storm in Oldham County. Ken?
Yeah.
We've been, kind of showing you the different funnel clouds that have been caught on videotape. We're going to take you across the river now to Jeffersonville. This video captured by 14-year-old Brad Kramer earlier today. And as you can see, and Ken has been pointing out all afternoon, very distinctive funnel cloud here. Some of them have just looked like a wall of clouds, but this very distinctive with the nature of the funnel cloud here.
And we have another view of this, Rachel, from different perspectives around town. And here is, once again, the 14-year-old Mr. Kramer's view. He's something else to be standing out there, especially as it was coming this way.
Right, and we're going to bring Ken Schultz into the picture when we get this next queued up, because can stand in front of it and show you as it was shaping up. When all of this started coming into the Louisville area this afternoon, we actually caught it. You all were tracking it live on the air on MetroCam.
We were on the air at about 4 o'clock, and MetroCam, we were following this system in Jeffersonville. Here's a view of it right now as it was making its way across Jeffersonville, Indiana.
And what you're going to see eventually
just a wall looked for rain, and you all were following it on Doppler, indicating it's a tornado, and the next thing we saw were these flashes coming up.
Right, and one of them is going to backlight the actual funnel. And it happens so quick, but nonetheless it will define. I think you're beginning to see at least the...
Okay, we're going to have our photographer...
We're going to cue this up to the point you were talking about.
Reverse this. Let's put this in reverse and show this, because this is an important scene from earlier.
All right, they're going to cue this up, but let's show you the aftermath of what you're going to see here. We've got some ground shots from Sky 11 earlier today. The hardest thing hit in Jeffersonville, Indiana, was this community center that you're looking at right here. Half of the roof, if you can look across the parking lot, that is the roof from the community center, was blown over onto another home right there. This is kind of the aftermath of that funnel cloud we're going to show you here as soon as it's queued up, of it coming in on MetroCam this afternoon. The amazing thing is, with all of the reports we've gotten, about 15 different funnel clouds. Ken, isn't that about what we're counting that we've had reported throughout the area?
I think at one point the question was asked, we counted 15, and then I think from that point on we added a couple more. So it may be even more than that, up close to 18 or something. Right there. Boom. You see that? This is a transformer blowing. This thing is creating problems on the ground. It's creating
all of this. A curfew is now in effect, went into effect at 8 o'clock. If you don't live in that area, you are not to be on the streets there.
And what a remarkable difference we saw on the streets from just a few minutes ago, Rachel, when we were at about 10 minutes to 8 o'clock. We saw people walking
milling around.
We saw police officers going down the street. Now the street's basically clear. All from a storm system. The first report came at 2:35 this afternoon, a funnel cloud in Du Bois County, Indiana. Then we had French Lick, Marengo come in at 3:43 was the touchdown there. Louisville, the first sighting of this tornado at 3:50 p.m., and we caught it for you here live on WHAS in our coverage as it was going over to Jeffersonville, Indiana, just before 4 o'clock. Buckner, Kentucky, 4:05, and all about 15 reports of funnel clouds and tornadoes from 2:35 to 5:15 p.m. A funnel cloud in Brooks, Kentucky. And we now have another severe storm system off to the west of us in St. Louis. And our crews are going to be following that as warnings break out throughout this evening.
And before we leave Marengo, just to let you know, Crawford County High School has now been set up as a shelter for folks in that area, obviously needing to seek refuge there because their homes have been destroyed or damaged enough with more bad weather coming our way that they might need to take shelter.
Yeah, we had one of the most encouraging reports, at least when we were on live with Lieutenant Danny Price, and Melissa Swan is now joining us live via SATCAM in Marengo.
Melissa?
Night is beginning to fall here in Marengo, Indiana, in Crawford County, Indiana, just over the hill. You can see a little bit of the damage and people still walking around. That is going to end, if it hasn't already, very shortly, because there is going to be somewhat of a curfew set in this town. At 8 o'clock, there will be a curfew in Marengo, Indiana, telling everyone who doesn't have absolute business to be here to get out. That will include people who do not live here, and even maybe some of those whose homes have been damaged and don't really have a place to go. There is a place for them to go at the Marengo Volunteer Fire Department and also the Crawford County High School. As you know from our reports earlier today, one person has died in the tornado in Marengo. We have been running around all day. Cell service is very bad. Communication is very bad here. Damage is terrible, of course, but a lot of people cannot reach loved ones, and so we believe we have 2 people missing. Perhaps they're being searched for at this hour. Earlier, Chloe Friedman of our staff talked to some of the victims of this tornado in Marengo.
I was standing outside watching the clouds. They were going like this way real fast, and it was real black, and all at once I heard a roaring sound, and I thought, I've got to get in the house. So I took off running for the back door, and by the time I got there, the wind's blowing from that direction.
When the ominous clouds started forming, everyone searched for a safe haven.
I was standing out here with him, watching it form above, and ran into the church base, or ran into my parents' basement, and our ears started popping. And
But even inside, Marengo residents weren't safe. This is what the community looks like. Wherever we turned, homes torn to mere splinters, and people out searching for loved ones.
Okay, nobody lives there. Nobody lives there, thank God. Other neighbors on the other side, they were fine.
We caught up with this family as they searched for Princess, the family dog.
Found the kennel.
The Marengo Fire Department has become a triage unit, treating the injured and a place for people to come together. They can no longer gather at Cedar Street Baptist Church. It's been here since 1887, but this is what's left of it.
After the tornado had passed over, we went out to look to see if anything was damaged, and my brother was like, the church is gone. I really didn't believe him, so I walked to the hallway that connects the house to the church, and
so you can see the devastation here in Marengo. It's also very humid, very hot here. Everyone is having a difficult time with almost everything that's going on. No power at this point. A lot of those who have been hurt are homeless now, have been taken to Crawford County High School here on State Road 66 between Leavenworth and Marengo. And our Chuck Olmstead of our staff was there earlier and talked to some of those people. What did they tell you, Chuck?
Heartbreaking stories. We were there at Crawford County High School less than 35 minutes ago, and I don't know if we have the tape ready. If so, I'll get ready to pitch to it. But you have hundreds of people who either have had their homes damaged to the point they can't stay, or they're looking for family members, wives, brothers, cousins, etc. If we've got that tape ready, let's take a look at the scene at Crawford County High School. Stay right there, stay right there.
All right, we don't have that tape, just to let you know that Chuck was talking about. We, of course, will have much more throughout the evening. If it warrants it, we will come back on the air. And, of course, a complete report and wrap up at 11 o'clock, unless we're on sooner.
The scenes from Marengo, they say 50% of the town damaged, partly destroyed. No question about that. And we leave you at this moment with that radar scene, live radar scene. There's Louisville on the right of your screen and St. Louis, the next city in the line of these storms, Evansville. We'll be back with you on the programming here, the WHAS 11 storm team here in the building. They'll be right on the air as these storms get closer, so stay with us.
That it was pretty bad.
What did it look like?
Trees were like toothpicks. There wasn't no roof on most of the apartment buildings. There was a whole apartment gone on the one opposite of us.
Was it very frightening when you were in the bathroom?
Yes, because we'd never been through anything like this before, and it was very traumatic for our family.
But your babies are okay?
Yes, they're okay, and thank God for that.
All right, thank you. That's Roberta Scharfenberger. Lived in an apartment complex in Marengo that was very, very badly damaged. Earlier today, our Chloe Friedman walked through the entire Marengo area with a lot of people who have been very hard hit.
If they're not a resident of Marengo, they need to leave. They need to get out of Marengo so the crews can work and the emergency vehicles can get around.
They wouldn't listen. We came to Marengo to the rest park, and you could see everything had been knocked down. The trees had been pulled out. It was bad.
Did you know your neighbor who passed away in the storm?
Yes, ma'am. We've known him for 8 years since we've lived here.
What is this like? It's almost, you can't even describe what's going on out here. How would you describe it to somebody that's not here in Marengo?
Total devastation. It's just destruction everywhere.
And this is a special ed classroom, frozen in time.
And like all those books and stuff, I mean, it's a good thing because they cleaned up everything, but all those books and stuff they just got, I mean, they just got them Thursday or Friday.
Living through it, hoping we live through it. I mean, you really didn't have time to think about possessions.
How long were you in the bathroom for?
I don't know, it seemed like forever, till I looked out and seen the top of the telephone pole was gone, and she said, "Is it over?" And I said, "I think so, but let's just stay here a minute or two longer."
And we want to leave you with one last poignant image, a place many probably wanted to gather on a day like today. But the Cedar Street Baptist Church, which has been in Marengo since 1887, is for now no more.
After the tornado had passed over, we went out to look to see if anything was damaged, and my brother was like, the church is gone. I really didn't believe him, so I walked through the hallway that connects the house to the church and walked into the church, and I could see the sky.
That was Chloe Friedman of our staff here at WHAS 11. I want to recap that one person did die in Marengo. His family, parts of his family are here with us now. They do not want to give his name over the air because some of his family members have not been notified. It was a 70-year-old man who lived in a trailer, but because the communication is so bad around here with the lines down and cell phone coverage out, they do not want to give his name. We do have one person who is unaccounted for. We have one person in the Marengo area who is unaccounted for. Also, they are asking here at the shelter at the Crawford County High School to put a message out to people. They need washcloths and towels. Washcloths and towels are needed for the people here at the shelter at Crawford County High School. We have 50 homes destroyed in Marengo, most of them damaged, and cleanup crews are asked not to report to Marengo, until after 8 o'clock, and I guess 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I guess I should mention that just a couple of hours ago, we were all herded into an interior room, the library here at the high school, because there was another tornado warning, and that turned out to be a bad thunderstorm here, but it did touch down, we believe, in Mockport, or at least there was some damage in nearby Mockport. So this has been just an incredible, incredible day, a day of destruction, and of course a Memorial Day weekend that the people here will not soon forget. Rachel, Doug?
All right, Melissa, we're going to kind of keep you here. We're going to start rolling some of our Sky 11, if we could, for Marengo, and just talk to Melissa, because we're starting, Melissa, we're seeing the elementary school right now with the dark green roof and part of that ripped off, and it was in that immediate vicinity that we're looking at the streets here that most of the damage seemed to be concentrated.
That's right. That is on Highway 66 that runs through the Marengo, through the center of Marengo there. And I think the street is Bradley there,
we're
but
looking
US
at
66
the apartment
right through
building
the center.
now.
And that is where you heard just a bit earlier Roberta Scharfenberger, who talked to me about huddling in the bathroom with her children. That is where she was. She was on the lower level, fortunately, of that apartment complex, and she rode out the storm in a bathroom in the apartment with several children.
Wow. And Melissa, you said at least, was it 50 homes, did I understand you correctly? 50 homes destroyed in Marengo? And again, like you said,
Right.
so devastating because it's such a small community.
Right. Indiana State Police were here with me earlier. The official count at this point is 50 homes destroyed in Marengo. Majority of the structures have some sort of damage. That may be from tree limbs or maybe glass or maybe the porch or something like that. Majority damaged. 800 people live in Marengo, very small town, and it is built kind of on a hillside, kind of meanders up and down a hillside there in Crawford County. And just the devastation is just incredible. This touched down and took everything in its path. You can see it right there along that one street.
And the game plan tomorrow, as you said, they are asking crews to arrive at about 8 a.m. and I guess that's when the cleanup begins in earnest.
Right. There was a lot of cleanup today and a lot of people volunteering to clean up. A lot of chainsaws. You know how it is in the aftermath of a tornado, Doug and Rachel. A lot of chainsaws there in Marengo. A lot of people already cleaning up. But, of course, the really heavy-duty cleanup will begin tomorrow. We've had a lot of people come in and volunteer here at the high school, all kinds of food. And as I said earlier, I want to stress that washcloths and towels are needed here at the high school probably pretty early in the morning. It is one thing they do not have. This is a great facility to house people in an emergency like this because it has everything you need, but not washcloths and towels. A lot of people have brought food, they have brought water to this location, but washcloths and towels are still needed. And then the cleanup crews are needed in Marengo, but only after 8 a.m. They're stressing that. That comes from Indiana State Police.
All right, well, Melissa, thank you so much. You all have been doing a great job out there for us today, and thank you very much for all your all's efforts out there.
And fortunately, they have power there at that school. We also want to bring in our Carrie Richardson, who was over in Jeffersonville, Indiana, covering the storm as it came through Jeffersonville the second time. Damage earlier this afternoon, about 4 o'clock.
Right, we went over there, I guess it was shortly after 11 o'clock, and we were watching the storm as it came in, not as strong as what they had seen earlier today. Take a look at some of the video that we have from Jeffersonville. Constant lightning. This is what we saw over and over again. There was hardly a 3-second span in which you didn't see lightning over and over again. Heavy rain. One good thing to note, we didn't see very many cars out on the road. Most people were staying home. This is back on the Kentucky side of the river. This is on 1st Street at the 65 on-ramp, and you can see there's a tree there. This is the 65 southbound on-ramp. We saw some cars that were slowing down to try to negotiate it. Some got through, some decided not to chance it and actually backed up to get back onto 1st Street. And this is interesting because it's actually 2 separate trees. Photojournalist Pete Ruiz told me that this is one tree that landed on the on-ramp, and then a second tree landed on 1st Street. So whichever way you went, there was a tree
and we
either
should say
side.
this is widespread. Trees down all throughout the region, blocking many roadways in Kentucky.
We saw that in Jeffersonville. We saw it in downtown Louisville. We've seen it on
River Road, Anchorage.
And you would think, and when we heard that there was a tree on 65, we thought, well, that's so strange to have a tree on the interstate, but it just goes to show you it's everywhere. It's not just
the last
on the
storm
side
on
streets.
Thursday night, we found along 71 trees coming down off to the side there.
And the storms pounded much of the state yesterday. Several tornadoes reportedly touched down. Fox 41's Dick Irby joins us live from Marengo, Indiana, with more. Good morning, Dick.
Hello, as I mentioned a while back, a curfew, which was used to secure the town during the nighttime hours, was lifted at 8 a.m. And you can perhaps see in back of me, people are already flooding in here to try to salvage what they can and to begin the cleanup in earnest. Now, one of the first cleanup targets is the Marengo Elementary School. Volunteers have gone to work to remove downed trees and limbs and debris. They want to clear the way so that insurance adjusters and state emergency management specialists can get in here and assess the major damage to the school. A lot of people have police scanners in this area, and a call went out last night asking for volunteers, and people are obviously responding. Neil Gabbard, a 30-year Marengo resident who now lives just outside of town, arrived at 6 a.m. ready to go with his chainsaw.
And I was really concerned about my family, and I had a friend that was taken in this tornado yesterday. and it's just awful.
So it just hurts, and you want to do what you can to help out.
Yeah, I mean, the town's done a lot for me here lately, and I'm having a benefit for a boy that wrecked a motorcycle here in town. So I thought I'd come down and help the town out.
So as Neil Gabbard mentioned, one person, an elderly man, was killed when his mobile home turned over during the tornado. That is the only major fatality, which is pretty amazing considering the scope of the damage here. Neil Gabbard's like a lot of people. He came over here and did what he could after the tornado hit. When it became dark, he went back home. The second storm came through. He spent a couple hours down in his basement. Very little sleep during the night. He has no electricity, so he took a shower this morning by unplugging an eaves trough and letting it drop down on him. And he's dried off and cleaned up and ready to go to work like so many people here today. And this town's going to be certainly a beehive of activity, if I can get away with saying that, during the day as they try to do what they can to get this town back in shape. In Marengo, Indiana, Dick Irby, Fox 41 News.
Thank you, Dick. And Dick was mentioning that second round of storms that came through last night. Eastern Jefferson County and the southern part of the county, two of the most hardest hit areas last night.
What I'm seeing right now is Jeff hones in with the camera. He's pulled in. I'm looking straight down from the pilot standpoint out the bubble of the helicopter, and I'm about 3,000 feet. We had to climb up. You can see a few scattered clouds coming in under us. We're clear above this. But we can see there are people out and about and trying to shake this off, get their lives put back together, and they realize what an enormous task they have ahead of them over the next months rebuilding this community.
Katie, as we continue to look at some of the pictures, because it truly is compelling and puts it in perspective of why our meteorologists were on the air nonstop yesterday. Tom, I do want to ask you, we talked about that second round of storms that came through. Did that also hit Marengo? Was it a 1-2 punch for them?
Well, yes, that second line last evening pretty much hit every county in our viewing area because it was a solid line of very intense thunderstorms. There were numerous tornado warnings, but apparently no touchdowns last night. Mostly it was just straight wind damage. But these pictures look very similar to what we saw yesterday afternoon when Katie was also over there in the Marengo area. So I don't imagine there was a lot of additional damage done from last evening's storms over there. It looks like most of this is the tornadic activity from the storm of yesterday afternoon.
And this may be the apartment building that Eric Flack talked about earlier during sunrise that got hit, and you can just see right into the rooms there. It's absolutely amazing. Katie, if you can describe a little bit better what you see.
Yes, as we're looking at this, I believe it is an apartment building. I'm on the front side of it now, and as I make my turn, I'm in a right-hand orbit, and I think we're about to go around to the back side. And I believe I saw earlier on the news that we had some folks in that apartment building that rode the storm out, that
Yes.
we saw rescue people trying to get out of there yesterday. And as I'm coming around on the back side and Jeff focuses in here, I think that is the building we were referring to earlier. Quite extensive damage you can see down inside that building. And the part of the building where the roof is missing, if you're looking on a map, that building is pointing southwest. If you're referencing due north, the destroyed end of that building is southwest. Carrie?
I'm just almost speechless when you look at that and realize that people were in that apartment building. That's a very dangerous place to be, especially if you can't get down to the first floor in time. And Tom, as we look at this damage, and you've been around for 35 years just here in Kentuckiana, and we're here for the '74 tornado, do you have a guess of what this level of tornado was?
We were trying to compare this. It looks like very similar, although much more widespread than they had out in the Eminence area last Thursday night. And that was rated by the Weather Service as an F2 in terms of force, which puts it at right around 150-mile-an-hour winds. Actually, 158 is the top for an F2. So looks a very similar type. Maybe a couple structures may have had a little bit more damage than that, but for most of it looks like F1, F2 damage, and which is very much what we saw in Borden last week and also in the Eminence area. And so it's just the problem is this time around it's much more widespread than we saw in either of those two sites last Thursday.
Unlike in Jeffersonville, where the damage is very localized, it looks like in Marengo, it perhaps maybe stayed on the ground for quite a while.
Well, yeah, Marengo's not a very large town, so I mean, but even if it's on the ground for a half a mile, that'd been pretty much enough to do what we see there, the major damage in that little town. So I guess I've heard pretty much 80%, maybe 4 out of 5 structures in the town have at least some damage this morning. And there you can see almost the whole town of Marengo from that shot. So it's a small town and probably a half-mile long, and you see the path of destruction that lay there on the ground.
I know you guys were on the air for hours upon hours yesterday as these warnings and watches moved through our area. This seems like one of the first areas that got hit. Is that correct? And how much warning did they get?
Well, there was sufficient warning from pretty much all of these storms. They were showing the classic signatures of developing the tornadoes. So I think the Crawford County warning may have come a little bit later. I remember we were on the air talking about that storm moving toward Crawford County and saying that people there should watch out. So the Weather Service did get warnings out before the tornado hit, as I think pretty much all of the tornadoes that or possible tornadoes that were around the area yesterday. The warnings were there because these storms were pretty much what I'd describe as classics, I guess you'd say. They all developed the hook echo, and they all, luckily, not all of them actually put those funnels down to the ground for any length of time. In a few cases, it was just like a kiss. They just had the funnel for quite a few miles along the air, but then only touching the ground very briefly, like the one in Jeffersonville.
And it looks like right now what we're seeing, and when we were over towards the right a little bit more, mobile homes that have just been picked up and tumbled about. And of course, we do know of the one elderly man who died during these storms yesterday in a mobile home, whose home was picked up and thrown. And he died in that. And that is, you know, a reminder right there that you have got to get out, even though you feel secure in these mobile homes because it's your shelter. It is the worst place to be.
They just don't have even when they're tied down securely, they just don't have the structural support that a house or a substantial building would have. So yes, it's been recommended for many, many, many years to leave your mobile homes if you're in any kind of warning whatsoever, to leave mobile homes or trailers and get to a place that's a little safer, a little more sound structurally.
Katie, as you continue to fly over, anything new that you've spotted or that has jumped out at you?
Well, Carrie, from if I might, if the station will allow me, I'm looking down at this, and I'm sitting here listening to you and Tom speak. And from a personal standpoint, witnessed this yesterday and this morning. I watch the people down below as they come together. I see the people on the air as they say they're thankful that no more people were hurt. We have a loss of life here. But as I look at this, and as we all attended our places of worship yesterday during this storm, I think now is a time that I would encourage our church communities and our other communities, don't just look at this momentarily on the TV and say, gee, that's terrible what happened in Marengo. I think now is the time that other communities really need to come together and call the emergency service folks and people in the area and the American Red Cross and say, what can we do as a group of people to reach out and help these folks? Because as I look down, their community is just destroyed, and they're really going to need the help and support, and we all need to reach out and put our arms around them.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, they cannot clean up this mess by themselves. I know the Red Cross went in there and set up the shelter last night at the Crawford County High School, which several people took advantage of because they don't have a home to go to or electricity to use. And but even those Red Cross workers said they're exhausted after Thursday's round of storms, and they've been working to provide shelter in Eminence and Borden, and now they're here in Marengo and other parts, and everyone just kind of needs a helping hand right now, whether you're a volunteer or somebody that's been affected by this, a victim.
Absolutely.
Very tough to see. It looks like definitely a lot of roofs missing. I think the hardest thing to see and the most compelling is when you just don't have a home anymore. And there are plenty of those that are just scattered about there on the ground.
Well, that's true. And as we look down, I'm looking at the outskirts of the small community here with the highways intersections where we have emergency service folks. And I would anticipate that anyone who has a need to come into this area, they probably are going to be guided or directed by local law enforcement and fire service. Because it's still, as we look down, even though it happened yesterday, it's still a dangerous area in there. They're working hard with the power lines that are down. You have debris scattered about. People could get hurt quite easily. And we heard earlier there were those that went around particular areas with their home cameras trying to get photos. I would suggest that this is not the time and place for that. We need to let these people work and start to get their lives back together in this community.
Catherine Grant had reported earlier during sunrise, at least one of the highways leading into the area had been shut down this morning, and they, you know, were asking people not to head that way. So definitely, unless you have a helping hand or have been called in to help or live there, not a good idea to go out there and gawk and sightsee. They definitely don't need that today.
And that's true. We, as I look down right now, I'm seeing even, I'm not sure as I look at the camera here if Jeff can get a shot, but I'm seeing emergency service crews working their way around in the streets. I see trucks putting out orange traffic cones, guiding intersections, keep the traffic in those intersections, keeping people away from the areas where even from this vantage point, I can't see the power lines, but we know they are down all over. There are trees down and building debris scattered among those power lines down there. So it's going to be an area that's going to take time to recover, to clean up, and even make safe to be around.
Katie, do you see very much of what I remember seeing in the Bullitt County tornado several years ago, where you would have one home that was completely destroyed or have heavy damage, and then across the street, the home would be perfectly fine, hardly a shingle out of place? Are you seeing much of that? I mean, it seems like everybody's damaged there.
No, we are seeing, in fact, as I look on the northwest outer edge of the community, believe it or not, it actually rises up to perhaps a little higher elevation of 100 feet or so than down in the town itself. There are homes there that haven't been touched. Their yards are clear, and even flying up this morning, I saw a couple of the areas that I described earlier where you'd have 100 to 200 yards of damage and go right through a front yard and the house. But 50 feet in front of the house, everything in front of it was wiped out. It's just amazing. It's an act of nature that we can't describe. Tom and John and Kevin all have a better handle on how these storms react and what they do and the tremendous force and power they carry with them. And they're just totally unpredictable, other than you can see the path coming. And as the storm team did last night, they did such a great job of following the storm, and they predicted very, very accurately where these things were going. And it just amazes me that we have the technology and the experience in the Storm Team 3 folks to be able to do that. And I believe that probably lives were saved and people were not injured because of that type of reporting.
Without a doubt, the technology has really come far. As we continue to look at some of the pictures up above, we do want to check in with Eric Flack, who is on the ground in Marengo, as people begin to come out in the daylight and assess the damage and also start the big task of cleaning up. Good morning, Eric. Eric, are you with us? Go ahead.
The damage is really just coming into focus today. People are walking around. This is Roger Curl, his mother and father-in-law live in town. You've been walking around. What are you saying?
It's just unbelievable how much a storm like this can do. I mean, the homes are damaged pretty heavy, the school, and I mean, everybody's lost a lot.
You're kind of hooked into the community. How are people doing?
Well, I mean, everybody's pulling together. Everybody was here in town late last night helping people, you know, pick up belongings, move stuff out, get it in before the second storm hit last night.
What do you think it will take for this town to build back?
Of course, it's a very small community, a small town. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of strong-minded people to put things back the way it was, and hopefully everybody can just pull together and do the best we can.
All right, thanks, Roger. We'll let you and your wife get on their way. So much has been destroyed in this little town of 850 people. Homes, businesses, buildings, trees, just about it all. I think we may have some video back in house we can roll, or we can keep on looking at the damage and destruction out here. We were with a woman named Tammy Wolf. Her and her family were staying in a Red Cross shelter last night, one of 53 people staying in a Red Cross shelter last night. They returned home this morning to see not only the destruction of their own home, but of many of their neighbors, and this is what happened.
That's where my friends live.
That's where my friends live, back there. It's gone.
That one person who died, an elderly gentleman living alone in a trailer, his name and age has not been released. So far, it is the only known fatality here in Marengo, Indiana, although local authorities do have cadaver-sniffing dogs going through all the wreckage to make sure that they haven't missed anybody. Right now, they think everybody is accounted for. As you can see, the homes, though, are not. At least 50, possibly more homes damaged and destroyed. They really won't have a full damage estimate until later on today. They're going door to door to see who, in fact, has had damage, who escaped the damage, and who is going to have to build back from scratch. We're going to be here all morning and all day in Marengo, Indiana. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Eric, for that live report. We do have reporters across the area, across Kentuckiana today, surveying the damage. We get more calls by the minute telling us trees have been knocked down, power lines, and damage to buildings. Want to join Justin Wilfon, who's in Jeffersonville, Indiana this morning, where image up there, which is very vast. Some of the pictures have been going in and out because it is a hard area to hit for us. But right now, a picture says it more than words could ever say. Total loss up there. And Tom, you brought up a good point. We don't know if there's really a business district up there where folks can start finding the help they need.
Hey, Carrie, are you talking to me? It's Katie.
Yeah, Katie, as you flew up there today, was there any sign of local stores where people could buy supplies that they're going to need to start this cleanup, or even drinks and food and that sort of thing?
Well, at my vantage point right now, as you can see, we're really having to pick and choose our sites to look down. But I can see across the, it's called Indiana, I believe, Highway 64. From north of the elementary school that was damaged. There appears to be a service station and a small store there that's open. And as I look around the community, I'm trying to see other store areas. There is some business taking place in a few of the local businesses on the outskirts of town, but I really can't tell by looking down in the community itself if there's any business being conducted there. I believe that was your question or comment.
Yes, it was. And early estimates have shown anywhere between 50 and 60 homes damaged. That's what we were hearing late yesterday. You think that's a fair assessment, or do you think that's definitely higher today?
Well, 50 or 60, from my vantage point, would appear to be a little bit on the low side. I don't want to exaggerate the damage because obviously as you're walking the streets and you have the addresses of all the homes and businesses within the area, you may have a more accurate answer to that, but it sure looks widespread in this community. Just about everything we look at has been damaged in some way or other.
And as Tom sits here to look at this, anything stick out in your head, Tom, as you see the damage?
Yeah, I would also agree with Katie. It looks like the estimate of 50 to 60 would be quite low. Of course, Marengo is a town of, I think, around 850 residents. If you have 2 or 3 per home, you probably have then well over several hundred homes. And it looks like if the early estimates of at least 2/3 to 3/4 of the houses had some kind of damage, we're talking well over 100, I would think.
It looks like we're looking at a mobile home park right there, and you can tell those mobile homes are just not on their, it's not the right side up there. They've been tossed and tumbled through the wind, and hopefully most of the people have been able to take other shelter by that point. It's hard to see that, though, and know that was where someone lived. They called home. They slept in their bed at night and spent time with their family, and now it's completely gone.
Just got pushed away. Several of those you can see are off their foundations. They're still upright. There were others that were just totally destroyed, and the one where the elderly gentleman died apparently was thrown upside down and crushed that way.
Now, we know that the National Weather Service will be out there surveying the area today, trying to put a tornado rating on this. What will they be looking for, Tom?
Well, first of all, to decide whether it's straight line winds or tornadic winds. Straight line winds, all the debris would be on trees and all that were down would all be in one direction if it was a straight wind gust that came through. But this debris looks so scattered and so irregular in its pattern, it's almost certain that it does have some kind of a spiral characteristic to it. So that would make it a tornado. But that, again, that's the first assessment. Was it straight line winds? Was it a tornado? Or has it happened last Thursday? And many of those severe storms which hit the Ohio Valley last week, it was a combination of both. They had tornadic winds as well as, excuse me, other parts of town had straight line wind. But this looks like it's almost a sure thing that it's a tornado. They will assess that, first of all, straight line versus tornado. And the next assessment that comes in is they have a chart in terms of you know, what's missing, what's damaged, what's destroyed. And for those various things to take place, they keep knocking the wind gauges up. And when they settle on the amount of destruction, the type of destruction, it fits into their so-called F scale or force scale. And this looks like it's an F2, possibly some areas may touch an F3, but for the most part it's probably an F2 type damage.
And that scale runs from F0 to F5?
Right. That's F0 would be 70, 80 mile an hour top, and it keeps going up from there with an F2 being, I think, the top around 158. F3 gets up there to almost 200 miles an hour.
Katie, before we go today, anything else that you want to point out from the air?
No, Carrie, I think what you're viewing here is something that's going to last in our memories for a long time, and we certainly know it's going to be in the minds of the folks that withstood this storm, and they're out doing their cleanup and hard work and efforts. And as we could see and hear on the last piece that we saw from the ground there, their emotions are quite high at this time, and they just have a tremendous task ahead of them. I think the reporting that we have heard from the storm team, from you and others, this terrible storm, especially in the mobile homes and areas, we really need to heed and take the warnings seriously and find shelter and areas to go to once we know these storms are coming through.
Have a plan and be able to put it into action. Katie, thank you for those wonderful pictures, and we only have a few seconds here, but Tom, all clear today, right?
Yeah, things are looking a lot better right now. 69 degrees in town. As we go on during the morning, expect to see skies clearing from west to east across the area. Plenty of sunshine this afternoon. Today's high temperature reaching around 80 degrees.
We will continue our coverage this morning. Stay with us right here on Wave 3.
Nice crowd outside on the plaza, many of them enjoying a 3-day weekend here in the Big Apple.
Sliced into the Indiana town of Marengo. The twister left one person dead in the community located 35 miles from Louisville. Most of the town's businesses and homes suffered some damage. We'll have a report from Marengo coming up at 50 past the hour in Storm Watch.
As you can imagine, Alexandra Steele looking out for you travelers. It's going to be a...
Her reaction when she saw the devastation.
That's where my friends live. That's where my friends live, back there. It's gone.
The storm is blamed for one death, an elderly man who was killed when the tornado hit his mobile home. Of course, we will continue our coverage throughout the day of the tornadoes that hit Kentuckiana, but right now we want to check in with Tom for a look at today's weather.
Her house has been damaged by this storm. There are a number of trees on top of her house, and her neighbors across the street, who I happen to know, Pinky Johnson. It looks like he has a little damage to his house as well. There you're looking at one of the homes that has been hit by trees here. It also appears that they have Westport Road blocked off because there is a power line and a power pole that is leaning over Westport Road right now, so I'm assuming that the power is out in this neighborhood as well. But the police have blocked off that section of Westport Road around Ormsby right now as they're trying to get work crews in there to restore power. I also see a lot of neighbors standing around, looking around, just seeing what the damage is this morning in this neighborhood near Westport Road and Ormsby Lane, if you're familiar with that. So we're going to hopscotch around here a little bit and show you some damage from the Anchorage area and perhaps out by Quail Chase Golf Course, and we'll get back to you here in the next few minutes.
We also are, of course, following very carefully perhaps the hardest hit area
of Kentucky, and that's Marengo, Indiana. The only fatality that we have heard as of yet as a result of the storms, an 83-year-old man dying there as a result of storm damage.
Now, Tony Hyatt has been there since, I guess, last evening or early this morning. He's standing by. He's been at a shelter most of the morning. I believe it looks like you have gotten out of the shelter now and are surveying what's going on there in the community itself. Tony?
Well, you know, Kirby, a lot of people wanted to get out of the shelter, and again, we've got a couple of search dogs. I want to show you these real quick. Folks, are you all just sort of double checking and making sure with the search dogs? We're with Channel 11.
Oh, actually, yes. We had about 3 people missing last night we couldn't account for, and we wanted to check that area out and make sure they were not there. Some were gone after the tornado weren't accounted for, and we were just making sure that they weren't there.
So far, nothing, but you know, everything seems to be fine?
Everything seemed to be safe, and no hits, no alerts, nothing in that nature.
Okay. Are you all with Jefferson County, Kentucky, or Jefferson County, Indiana?
Jefferson County Search Dog, Kentucky.
Okay. So I guess you're going to try to go through the entire area here?
We've already done it.
Already done it?
Yeah, we were just helping the damage assessment guys out to know where to start at, because we've already been through it and searched the area.
Okay, good enough. Well, we thank you for taking the time. I know you probably have had a long night. Now, Kirby, what you're talking about, that we had one fatality here, and there had been some reports of maybe some people missing, and as you heard, they were doing this sort of the check just to make sure. Wanted to show you just a couple of things. This is some metal that's wrapped up in the fence. It's possible it probably came from that outbuilding there, which is next to this remodeled house. I'm going to ask Billy Payne. Billy, come here a minute. Billy's from Marengo. This is Elk Street, by the way, folks. Billy, you live here. You were telling me that your apartment, which is probably on the other side of the hill there, is kind of destroyed.
Right up on the hill, yeah.
Walk me through this area. I mean, it's got to be hard for you to take a look at.
It's stretched all the way up from the retirement home all the way up on top of the hill, all the way back over to the cave area, and everything's pretty much destroyed. I mean, it's a total.
You were telling me that house right there is just recently remodeled.
Yes, sir. It was just remodeled maybe about a month ago. And this one here, they just got finished with it not too long ago, too.
Okay. We also have damage to the Marengo Elementary School, and as you can see, Billy, I guess, you know, you're like everybody else. You're walking around seeing who's still here and who might need some help and that type of thing.
Right, yeah. My dad's trying to get his dump truck down here. We're just going through and helping whoever we can right now, trying to get stuff moved out now, you know. They told us that the apartments were totaled, so we're going to have to all move out of the apartments up there. So
that's going to be a bit of a problem for you, because I know here in this you all have a nice little community, and there's just not that much in the way of housing here, is there?
No, a whole lot of people are probably going to be moved into like the motels down in Carefree, and me and my wife were lucky. We started renting a place yesterday, and we were getting ready to get our life to where we were out of the apartments, and this happens. Okay. So, you know.
Billy, thanks a lot. I know it's tough, and we appreciate you taking the time with us. And once again, Kirby and Joe, probably the good news that started our report off, those search dogs from Jefferson County went up to the area where they thought there were some folks who were missing, and they didn't find anything. So, you know, maybe some folks just weren't home at the time, and they just haven't had a chance to check in. But if there's any good news out of what's been going on here, as you can see from all of this, that might be the best news we've got of the day. There's a lot of crews here. There are a lot of folks, volunteers working. Down on the street, we've seen power crews. There's the damage to the electrical system and the electrical grid in this area is going to be really hard to untangle. But and we've got some stories to tell you, and we'll probably tell you before the day's over with, of some people who got caught in the middle of this thing and how they managed to not get too hurt. They got banged up a little bit, but they managed not to let the tornado get the best of them. So that's the way she looks right now in Marengo. So and as I say, it's just everywhere you look, it's something. This is probably the worst that I have seen of the 4 days that we've been doing this with the coverage that we've been doing. Back to you all.
Thank you very much, Tony. Of
That's
course,
true. He was in Eminence, and so he's comparing what he's seen in all these different areas.
Of course, towns of somewhat similar size. Eminence in Henry County has about 3,000 residents. Come to think of it, I guess where he is in Marengo today, about 800 people live there. And earlier we heard an estimate anywhere between 50 and 80% of the homes in Marengo are somewhat damaged in some way or destroyed by last night's tornado.
So it sounds like they're going to have to keep that shelter open for longer than maybe they had anticipated, if that is the fact. All right, so as you could see, the skies are sunny out there right now. Let's check in with Jeremy Capel right now, who has been covering the storms and now into this.
Tony, this might, I imagine, be the governor of Indiana inspecting the damage.
Well, that's probably good speculation right now, Joe. This helicopter showed up about 5 minutes ago, and it's been circling and just sort of looking at damage. You may recall last Friday, The National Guard was escorting Lieutenant Governor Steve Pence around as far as looking at the damage and imminence. So we're not 100% sure. It very well could be the governor. And, you know, it was rumored that he was going to be coming down here today, his second trip to southern Indiana, unfortunately, to see all the storm damage. While we've got you here, we wanted to show you, and Forrest, that helicopter is going to come over a house, and I want Forrest to sort of pan down to that Bronco that you see right there in front of that house. And I'm going to have Howard Lincoln, who owns that Bronco, and the reason why I have Forrest on that, Mr. Lincoln, you've got an interesting story. When you were here when the tornado was going on, and you told me that you used that Bronco to help you while the tornado was going on. Tell me a little bit about that.
Helped me hold me down to the ground. I grabbed up underneath on the bumper and just held on for dear life.
Now you said you were in the process of videotaping it.
Well, we was videoing, trying to video one to the northwest of us when this was snuck into the west. We didn't know it. I didn't hear anything about it. It just snuck over the hill, and there it was. And there's too much debris blowing for me to get to the house. And either way I went, I was going to get hurt. So I figured I'd get less hurt there than I would maybe a piece of tin wrapped around my head.
So did you crawl underneath the Bronco and just sort of hold on to the front bumper?
Underneath the front bumper.
Bronco's still there now. If Forrest will turn back around, you had a little bit of, got some bumps and bruises and some scratches.
Rash, where the debris went underneath the Bronco and twirled around. A few stitches.
Doing okay?
Doing fine.
Now your house is total loss, you were telling me, or?
What they say, it says total. It's off the foundation. Everything's busted underneath. So they're saying pretty well destroyed.
Okay. Folks, that's Howard Lincoln. Mr. Lincoln, appreciate it. I'm glad you're okay, and at least you got through with some bumps and bruises. And another one of those amazing stories, Joe and Kirby, when you get caught in a tornado, duck under your car. And we talk about that from time to time. Ken Schultz does. Let me show you a little bit more video from this area. We're on Elm Street here in Marengo. Elm Street, excuse me. Thank you. I thought I saw an M instead of a K instead of an M. I want to show you a little bit. This is further on down where Murphy and Elm Street actually meet, and where they're actually doing some more. In fact, you know, it's just a repeated measure over and over and over again. And it looks like also, I tell you what, let's go back to the helicopter for a minute. It looks like we're getting ready to land here in the school. And unfortunately, it may land on the other side of that debris, so we may not be able to see if that's the governor or not. But essentially, that's what we're looking at right now. They're looking for a safe spot to land. And they obviously don't want to kick up any debris that might be over there, because believe me, there is plenty of it down here in this area. We are just in front of the Marengo Elementary School. So Joe and Kirby will keep you posted, and I'll go run over there and see real quick if that's the governor of the state of Indiana. Let me throw it back to you all in the studio.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that, and of course.
Now we want to head back to Marengo, Indiana, probably the area hardest hit by the storms, the afternoon storms yesterday. And Tony Hyatt has been there for many, many hours and brings us more. Tony?
Well, Kirby, want to confirm for you that essentially what you said earlier was true. FEMA is here. That is the group that was in the helicopter. They went off up the hill over to the Village Square Apartments, which we understand are destroyed. That was federal housing that was over on the other side. I don't know if you can see it or not. There's a tall building with what looks like a blue chimney. Those apartments were over there. People finally got a chance to come in after they lifted the curfew this morning. Some walking around in disbelief, others folks just going like, well, hey, it's time to roll the sleeves up and start cleaning things up. But time and time and time again, you'll get people that will tell you they're glad that there was only one fatality throughout all of this area as a result of the high winds yesterday. And Joe, you mentioned something a moment ago about volunteer fire departments, and I got to give a plug. I was working on a story yesterday before the storms broke out. There are a lot of volunteer fire departments, not only in Kentucky and southern Indiana. They've had their hands full. They all told me yesterday they're committed to collecting for the crusade, but it probably would not hurt if somebody wanted to drop a few donations off by the firehouse to make it a little bit easier on them. So I'm going to close with that, because those guys and a lot of other people in the last 4 days have been doing an awful lot of work to help these people get back on their feet, straighten things out. And again, I was surprised that they were still committed to the crusade, going to do it despite trying to help folks here and over in Kentucky. So that's pretty much it from Marengo. We will keep you posted. The governor was scheduled to come here within an hour or so, we're being told now. So if he does, we'll let you know. But that's the way she looks. Tony Hyatt, WHAS 11 News.
You can close for now, but we'll be counting on you for more reports coming up today at noon. Tony, thank you very much.
Right now, we want to send it over to Jeremy Capel, who's been tracking the weather for us all yesterday and again today. Jeremy?
Kirby, that final round of severe weather that hit the area.
I've had, you know, seen
of any casualties or anything, or heard of any yet.
Well,
but I was actually in it when it happened.
I want to turn to one of the worst hit areas of the community, Marengo, Indiana, where one man is dead and we know 50% of the town destroyed.
That's right. Melissa Swan has been there all afternoon. They've set up the high school, Crawford County High School, as the shelter site. All right, we're going to Ken first, and then we'll go right back, Melissa. Hang on just a second.
Yeah, I don't want to lose sight of this storm down here in Marion and Taylor counties, because it still exhibits a circulation. Dave, show me.
We're going to go right to Melissa Swan, who is in Marengo and has been there all afternoon. Melissa, reporting live from the high school.
Yes, I am. I'm here at Crawford County High School, where a shelter's been set up. You can see lots of beds, 2 little boys in the back, and I want to take you outside in this high school where all the people are sitting with their food. Earlier today, busloads, literally, of people came to this high school from the Marengo, Indiana, which just has been devastated. It's really
You talked about a lot yesterday were
Yes.
the supercells, and what exactly did that mean?
And it's very appropriate that you bring that up. It just so happens I have something prepared for that.
Was that right?
Supercells responsible for much of the damage that we saw across the region yesterday. A supercellular thunderstorm, just thought you should know, is a particularly dangerous type of thunderstorm characterized by a rotating updraft capable of producing large hail and strong tornadoes. They're also characterized by having a very long life rather than most typical thunderstorms who pop up and then they collapse and die. These supercellular thunderstorms, which we saw across the region yesterday afternoon, tend to have a long life. And again, they do put down the strong tornadoes, and we saw several of those yesterday. Here's what it looked like yesterday over a 12-hour period from yesterday early afternoon. And going back to the afternoon, this is when we saw most of the activity. Supercellular thunderstorms across the Ohio Valley along a warm front. We had an east wind to the north, to the south, the warm front of south wind carrying up tons of moisture, upper level energy moving in from the west, and a powerful cold front triggering more convection up and down the plains and also in the Mississippi River Valley. Intense thunderstorms yesterday. We weren't the only ones to see the tornadoes, because over the last 2 days, approximately 180 reports of tornadoes and funnel clouds have been reported across the eastern half of the U.S. Indeed, it has been a historic event, especially here. Look at all the thunderstorms, and look, I should say, look at all the tornado reports we've had across the region. Again, all of these not confirmed, but everywhere in red shows you, including that very intense tornado, which has been rated an F3 near Marengo in Crawford County, and also several reports across Floyd County, southern Clark County, and southern Indiana, and several reports across Jefferson County as well. And of course, lots of wind damage, hail, and plenty of funnel clouds across the region. We do still have one ongoing threat from yesterday's storm that is
Storms and day as well, as Kentuckiana gets hit again. This time, one man is dead after a tornado swept through Marengo, Indiana. Our top story at 12:30 today, people across Kentuckiana picking up the pieces after another round of powerful storms.
Last night's storm hit Marengo, Indiana, the hardest hit, wiping out up to 80% of the town's buildings. Now, Marengo is about 30 miles northwest of Louisville. WHS 11's Tony Hyde has been out all morning assessing the damage and talking to the residents there, and you brought us some really amazing stories throughout the morning. Thanks a lot, Tony.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Kirby. I want Forrest, if he can, to sort of go on over to the helicopter. We've had another military helicopter land, and we think this might be Governor Joe Kernan, who we've been expecting most of the morning to tour this area. This will be the second time now he's had to come down to southern Indiana because of weather-related disasters. Last week, of course, in Borden and the flooding and everything like that. In this particular area of Marengo, one of the hardest hits, people have been walking around all morning. Let's show you just some of the video that we have seen from around here off of Elm Street and around Murphy, even getting close to the downtown area. We're a little bit up, but most of the houses look like other places that we have seen throughout these last 4 days. The tornadoes that came through, they believe 3 came through here in Marengo. We had 1 fatality, but fortunately, they don't think they've had anybody else who's missing. And for people who are cleaning up now and the people who own most of these homes, it's just a matter of trying to cope.
It's just terrible. You can't imagine
imagine how beautiful this country is here, and to look at it now and see all the trees down and all these old homes is just, it's just the worst for these people.
It's horrible, but you know, you can't help but to look at the people and smile because they're all alive, and you know, and I think everybody's dealing with it really well.
Once again, we're showing you a picture of the military helicopter that's landed. We believe the governor of Indiana is in that military helicopter. He has not stepped out yet, and that is right in front of the Marengo Elementary School here. This is where a helicopter landed earlier, had FEMA officials on it. So, John Kirby, we're going to stay with this shot. We haven't seen the governor come out. He might be getting a briefing right now, but just to let you know, the American Red Cross could use some help. They could use some donations, specifically of washcloths, towels, volunteers, cash. As you might imagine, this has put a little bit of a strain on the American Red Cross budget. That's up here in Crawford County, Indiana. Don't go contacting the Louisville Red Cross. They'd like to help, but they're not coordinating this effort. So once again, we're going to just keep showing this picture of the helicopter. Maybe the governor will pop out if he is in there and let you know that that's the way things stand right up here in Marengo. Reporting live, Tony Hyatt, WHAS 11 News.
Thank you. He referred to that Marengo tornado killed an elderly Crawford County resident. It struck his trailer. WHAS 11's Chloe Friedman spoke with the victim's granddaughter.
Today, a community will start to pick up, while one family plans a funeral.
I mean, just the devastation of it all. I mean, it was...
83-year-old John Laswell lived a quiet life.
Yeah, he's been there forever.
It ended when the twister ripped through Marengo. His granddaughter says he probably didn't even know what sent his trailer spinning.
He was hurting you and he'd hang up on you if you call him. I can't hear you, and he'd hang up on you, you know. And he was in bad health. He was dependent on his oxygen.
Now Laswell's family says he's in a better place. Far away from the devastation many call home. Chloe Friedman, WHAS 11 News.
The National Weather Service says that tornado had maximum estimated wind speeds of 170 miles per hour. Jeremy Capel has more on the classification of that twister coming up in our weather.
And people in Jeffersonville, Indiana feel certain a tornado destroyed a community center and damaged several homes there. The roof of the Kenneth Ellis Community Building was tossed against a neighbor's home. This is the storm that did the damage. Amazing pictures as a transformer explosion lights up the funnel cloud. There we go.
Around here, or are you talking
just
across
the whole
U.S.?
country?
We just looked that up, me and one of our producers, Kat. 176 tornadoes reported in 2 days across the eastern half of the U.S. So indeed a phenomenal event it's turned out to be.
Is that a record?
No,
It's not.
It won't be a record, even if they're all confirmed, because we know what happened in one day back in 1974.
Right.
148 confirmed, and they were all strong.
Now, real quick, and to put you on the spot here, we mentioned the Marengo tornado, and I believe we have some classification now.
I actually made a graphic. I heard you say this. I made a graphic. If we could go to the weather computer real quick, we can go ahead and show up the numbers, the official numbers on the Marengo tornado. I do have that on the weather computer for you. Maximum intensity, and it looked like it was strong. Didn't realize it was this strong. F3, which is really up there. That's comparable to the 1990 tornado that struck Floyd Knobs in Indiana. 170 mile per hour top winds. That is very impressive, and 400 yards wide is pretty wide. It's going to be kind of hard to outrun that thing if you saw it coming. Estimated path length was 19 miles. It actually started near Tazewell. That's in northwestern parts of Crawford County, and continued to extreme northeastern Crawford County, just north of Milltown. So indeed, a very intense tornado. It did turn out to be, of course, nothing like that out there today, guys. That is the good news. Let's take a look outside MetroCam, and just some nice puffy cumulus clouds. Those aren't the angry ones like we saw yesterday across the region.
Good evening, I'm Dawn G. live in the Wave 3 studios.
And I'm Scott Reynolds live here in Marengo up in Crawford County. And if you could take a small town like this and put it in a big blender, that's pretty much what this F3 tornado did. Take a look at the damage behind me. Here's the huge swath as it went just right off the main drag through Marengo and just sheared off all the treetops behind me and mixed everything up. You've got trees, parts of homes, all the personal belongings churned together into one big mess that will take days, if not weeks, to clean up and to figure out who just owns what, if anything is salvageable here. This is the northern part of Crawford County. Marengo is a town of about 800 people, and it has now been determined by the National Weather Service that this was an F3 tornado that hit here, and it was about 170 miles per hour, the top wind speeds from this tornado. Today, as people walk the streets here, take pictures and look through what's left of their homes and belongings, so many of them echo the same theme, that they're just lucky to be alive.
Right now, we're trying to move out as much stuff as possible, salvage what we can salvage, and start all over again.
Shannon Sanders and her family weren't home when the tornado hit Marengo.
The garage, as you can see, it's demolished.
But the top half of their house took the brunt of it.
The roof is pretty much completely blown off. There's no roofing at all whatsoever.
Just one of the many homes in this community ripped apart by the tornado.
There you go.
And now the overwhelming task of putting the pieces back together again, with some help from strangers.
Volunteers, people I don't even know, are here and helping out.
We don't know who he is, but we're just going to help him out and get him on the road.
Bill Land and his church group came in from Mitchell, Indiana to help.
We've seen on the news this morning on Channel 3, Wave 3 actually, I was watching through your camera from your helicopter, and Billy Graham said, well, let's go down here and see if we can't help him. So here we are.
It's hard to know where to begin. Utility lines scattered across the roadways, tree limbs and personal belongings blanketing residents' yards. And in the middle of it all, a family grieves over the loss of their father.
Dad's a good man. He's a good, honest man.
83-year-old John Laswell died in Sunday's tornado. He was in bed when his mobile home was flipped over.
God was ready for Dad. And I think Dad was ready for him.
A son who lives a few miles from here came to check on his dad, but it was too late. And there could have been so many more deaths here than just Mr. Laswell. Just down the road, there was a mobile home here with a 30-year-old mother and her 6-month-old son demolished, but they got out minutes ahead of time because their parents 11 miles away in Leavenworth called and told them to get out of there and get to the senior citizens housing complex here, which is a brick structure. So they got out in the nick of time. Many stories like that will be told for generations to come here as this small town of Marengo continues to try to rebuild. And of course, there was a tornado that touched down also in another part of Indiana, in Jeffersonville yesterday. It was captured on home video.
Get in the restroom, y'all, look. Get in the restroom.
You can see the twister get closer and closer to the ground, and then it finally touches down. It was only on the ground for a few seconds, but that was enough to rip the roof off the community center there in Jeffersonville, and that roof landed next door right on top of a home. And back here in Crawford County, in Marengo, Indiana, about the only good timber you'll find standing are these fresh power poles being put in by the electrical crews right now as they're trying to restore power here. This work will go on as long as they can get out here and get it done tonight as they try to get power restored to this community. And boy, has Mother Nature done its devastation in this area of Indiana. Not that many years ago, they actually moved the town of English, Indiana from the bottom of its valley and just put it up the hillside a bit because of all the flooding. Now, here in Marengo, just a few miles away, this town won't look the same for many, many years to come because of the hundreds and hundreds of trees damaged and about 80% of the homes suffering damage from the F3 tornado here. Surprisingly, and really amazingly, they managed to finish a golf tournament after all these storms and all this heavy rainfall that we've had out at Valhalla.
I want to show some more home video. You had the Jeffersonville tornado a few minutes ago. This one was outside of Corydon. Only touched down briefly, but you know, that's a mean-looking storm.
It's a big thing.
It looked big and may have done some damage in a rural area, but we had no buildings damaged, and there it is as it's kind of dissipating again. It didn't last very long there. That was from Stephen Thompson. He lives about 3 miles north of Corydon. Took those shots there. All right, let's review these numbers again. Got 2 official reports in now of the storm surveys. The F3, as Scott had mentioned, at Marengo. This tornado is not on the ground all through Crawford County, kind of bouncing along that path there. And you know, it's a very rural county. but to think that it would hit right through the heart of Marengo at its strongest point, 170 miles an hour. The total path length, 19 miles, is about 400 yards wide. All right, the Jeffersonville tornado has been confirmed. It briefly reached up to F1, 90 miles an hour. It was only 10 yards wide, so not very big, and the path length was about 2 miles. It touched down at the end of Arlington Street in Clarksville, right at the flood wall there, and went across and eventually, well, it hit the community center, and also part of the roof at the Census Bureau was taken off there. But again, only an F1 listed on that. And then other tornadoes around the area, none of these other ones confirmed, but we do have seen some pictures of some of them. We've had people talk about how they touched down very briefly, but there's a possibility we could have as many as 10 to 12 touchdowns in the local area. All right.
Before we leave you here at 7, let's check in again with Scott Reynolds live in Marengo, Indiana. Scott?
Dawn, we do not want to forget, especially on this Memorial Day, the only person to die here in the Marengo tornado, the World War II veteran, 83-year-old John Laswell. He had emphysema. He was living in that mobile home pretty much bedridden. Like his family said, God was ready for him and he was ready for God. His son came here to check on him. A son who lived about 30 miles away, but it was too late. He had 7 kids. He served in World War II. He drove a tank for the Army, and he'd probably be the first person to tell you he was glad it was him rather than so many of the young children and babies who narrowly escaped death here in Marengo. And they continue to replace these torn down power lines here in Marengo with new ones. The power crews just told me they'll work till 11 o'clock tonight and have the power up and ready to go, but to who? They said there's really no one here that needs power now because of the devastation to all these homes here, Dawn.
Scott, I'm sure that it is still devastating, but it looks like the city is getting back, hopefully, to normal, so we appreciate that. To everyone on this Memorial Day, thank you for watching. We salute our vets, and we will be back tonight.